For those with good taste.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? It's your boys from For Those With Good Taste. I'm Matt. He's Lenny.
Hello.
And we are back with another hot edition of the Tale of the Tape, Len.
It is that time of the week, Matt. We're talking some MMA, some combat sports. I might even drop a little jig about wrestling.
You're saying we're talking about all the good stuff this week.
Everything that's good with two dudes sweaty.
And women.
In a cage.
And
that's
women.
A good point, dude. That's a great
It's equal
point.
rights, dude.
I know what I'm there for, though.
Well, if you have no idea what we're talking about UFC 260, Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou, part dos, happening this weekend,
That's
Saturday.
The baddest man on the planet. That's the title on the line right now, man.
Man, I mean, one of these guys already has it, and the other guy's coming for it.
Yeah.
And a clash of the titans, if you would.
But we'll get into that later.
Yeah, it's a little too soon to get into that. What we like to talk about today, we'll kick it off with one of our picks just going bad, and I would say that's just kind of becoming the normal thing around here.
I mean, it was a bit of a throwaway, and you say that, but like the week prior, I think we were 3-0. No, 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3.
Some would say we were spot on.
Yeah,
regardless.
we were actually on a good little stretch, but yeah, we did not give Derkek Brunson any respect.
I mean, I think we bought into the hype of Kevin Holland. We really loved the personality that he was bringing. I mean, you couldn't knock a guy who said, I got dildos in the car. I'm here to fuck this guy. Like, you can't knock that. I mean, the guy had some charismatic moments, but what do you think about the overall outcome of the fight?
Let me talk about the fight from my perspective. I really only can comment from about the 3rd round through the 5th round.
Okay.
What had happened was...
This never ends well.
So, Matt, I for the first time this weekend, dabbled in some juice infused with marijuana.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do tell.
Have you ever done that before?
I have not.
Okay, yeah. So, first time for me drinking THC.
Bringing a whole nother terminology to the word juicing.
Yeah, so it was like I got home at about like 8:30, and I had a bottle like yay big, passion fruit flavored. It was incredible tasting.
Where do I sign?
I'll get you some.
Okay.
So I drank that, and about 30 minutes later, so in my room I have my bed obviously, but I have a gaming chair, and I also have a like a recliner.
Yeah,
like
for those who don't know, Lenny has a small apartment for a bedroom.
Yeah. It sounds bigger than it really is. Like I don't use the.
If I had a nickel.
What I was gonna say, is like I don't really ever use the recliner. I play video games, so I sit in my gaming chair and then I go to bed.
Yeah.
The recliner generally has clothes on it. I drank this drink, Matt. I was like, that recliner looks fucking incredible.
Never been so inviting.
So I curl up in the recliner. I've got the fights on my phone. I'm watching a little bit of Justice League on my TV. I'm going back and forth. But I find myself just fighting, getting drowsy here.
Okay. You're fighting back the old eyelids.
But to the UFC's credit, they put on a very good card this weekend, right? And there was a lot of knockouts. So I'm like optimistic. I'm like, bro, this is cruising. It is cruising. We're going through the main card. It's like 11 o'clock. There's been like 3 first-round finishes.
It was primed for something good to happen.
Yeah, well, and I'm like, we're going to get over quick, so I won't have to stay awake too much longer. And I swear to God, dude, I got all the way to the main event, and for some reason, I thought it was a good idea. As soon as Kevin Holland was walking out, I was like, all right, you can lay down in the bed and watch this one.
Oh, no.
I was like, you can lay down in the bed.
Can already tell this isn't going to end well.
So next thing you know, I wake up and I hear them talking about like, yeah, I mean, Kevin Holland, it's almost like he's just accepting being on the bottom. And I'm like, what fucking time is it? And I look at
what world have I woken up to?
Yeah. And I wake up, it's the 3rd round. It's like the end of the 3rd round. He's on his back and it's just like, okay, well, this is apparently how this fight has gone.
Yeah, it certainly, it got ugly quick. You kind of really recognized that it wasn't going to go well for Kevin Holland if he wasn't able to adapt. And somewhere along the line, you kind of had a feeling that he just, you don't want to use the word give up, but you almost kind of feel like he was facing the inevitable.
So you side with Dana White on this?
I don't think he succumbed to the occasion. I think Dana White's comments were more focused on his post-fight antics and how he kind of was celebrating what was his victory, but it wasn't his victory. It was Derkek Brunson's.
So you think that, like, so Dana White's comments were something to the like of the big lights were too bright for him, right? He choked in the moment a little. I didn't necessarily get that vibe. I did feel like it was sad to see him like taking a body triangle from the bottom and like kind of accepting position a little bit.
Yeah.
I was happy for him with the takedown in the 5th, but at the same time, you look like kind of a fucking loser. Like
you didn't really, what was that going to do? You weren't really making any advancements. He didn't look dangerous at any point from the bottom, and you weren't really making the valiant attempts to get up. It was a slow burn for Kevin Holland on this one.
It felt like he could have won on the feet, but I believe Bisping had brought up, like, he kind of crashes into his strikes. So, when you're doing that against a wrestler or a guy who does just want to take you down, you can't strike like that. He wasn't
you lose all
composed
momentum.
enough. Yeah, he wasn't composed enough on the feet or strategic enough. The good thing for him is the guy has a great personality. So
yeah, this isn't going to stop him.
Despite the loss, I think he'll be able to make a comeback from this. But do you find yourself? I was trying to think about this today. Did we maybe give him too much credit for the Jacare performance? Like, is beating Jacare in 2020 like? I just thought in that fight, the way he did it, if he had knocked him out on the feet, it would have been like, all right, that's really not much to me. But the fact that he had done it from the bottom gave me hope that even if Brunson gets him down, he had the type of game to get back up.
Yeah, I don't think either one of us foresaw him not being aggressive from the bottom. I think we can both say that just from past appearances, we knew that he would be fantastic on the feet. If he did get taken down, which is a huge possibility against a guy like Derkek Brunson, we knew that this was going to be something that he would have to kind of prove himself, where he's going to be able to get out of these bad positions or make the most out of what he's given.
Yeah,
he just didn't really rise to the occasion, and that's why I hesitate to say that the lights were too bright for him. First big test against a household name in Derkek Brunson. I don't think this is the end for him. He's got a great personality. He's been very defiant in his post-fight interviews. This isn't the last time we see Kevin Holland.
So, there was obviously a winner in this matchup, and it's Derkek Brunson. And do you think we're at the point now with him where he's shaken off that maybe reputation he had gained as a guy? We talk about this weekly. It's just there's levels in MMA, and it's like, I think Brunson has been treated as kind of a gatekeeper to that division for some time now. Whether it's gauging where somebody is on their way out, like an Anderson Silva, or giving a guy on the way up, like an Izzy, the opportunity to go against him. He's a good person to kind of show you where you're at in the division. But is he now take that step up? He called out Paulo Costa. Is that something that you would be interested in seeing? I mean, Paulo's obviously going to be freed up now.
Yes. Hopefully he can free himself from the bottle long enough to sit on a fight. We knock Botticina way too much on here, but Derkek Brunson has always been the guy that, they use him for big name fights, but it's usually to propel someone or try and get them to the next level. But Derkek Brunson is always been a dangerous opponent for anybody at that division. If I want to see if Botticina is taking life seriously, Derkek Brunson is the perfect gauge for that. But Derkek Brunson is eventually, if he plans on, extending his career and taking himself to the next level, he's got to be able to look competitive against these guys. And for the most part, he really hasn't. The fight with Anderson Silva, I think Anderson Silva won that decision, but it definitely shouldn't have gone that way. I think Derkek Brunson should have won that.
Yeah. He's with a new camp, and I almost want to say he's with dude who's been killing it recently. Former fighter there, still kind of does fight. His head is it's in my head right now.
UFC Ottawa.
Henry. Okay, so he's still with Henry Hoof at Black Zillions then. Okay. Or he's taking up more time with maybe Henry Hoof. It did look like strategically he was a little bit more there in this fight.
Yep.
So I think it's ready. It's time for him to get another crack at the guys at the top of the division here. I'm interested to see it. Do I think that he really gets through those guys? Not necessarily, but
I'd love to see him against a Kelvin Gastelum. Give me that fight. That could be very interesting. But Gastelum's booked against Whitaker, so
and matchups make fights, because I don't actually think that's a good matchup for Gastelum too much. Like after the Chris Weidman fight, for instance, kind of.
Brunson's a big boy at 185, and Gastelum is not a big boy at 185. But In the aftermath of everything that's been going on, we kind of had to right some wrongs that we talked about last week.
Mm-hmm.
One of those situations where the UFC listens to our podcast and goes, you know what, we can't give those guys any credit for any of the great shit that they said.
Dana was in my DMs like, dude, like, you're fucking wrong.
Can you stop spreading the hot goss?
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm not going to accept that fucking request, dude.
I got him the fuck out of there.
So they decide to switch things up, and we get two pretty huge bookings at 155 pounds. We get Dustin Porier, Conor 3.
Mm-hmm.
Some would say red panty night for Dustin Poirier, turning down the title shot.
Yeah.
And then we get Charles Olivera coming off of a huge win, taking on Michael Chandler for the vacated 155-pound title, recently vacated due to the official retirement of one Khabib Nurmagomedov.
First of all, it's interesting that Poirier basically had a choice here. He had the choice of fight one of these other guys for the belt, become the champion, or fight the guy who's going to make you the most money. I don't think anybody faults him here for taking that fight.
No.
Championship's always going to be there. Conor, you never know. He loses another one, you might never get your rematch with the guy. So I have no issue with that there. I did think it was a little interesting, though, rebooking Chandler after all indications. Even Gaethje was like, I woke up this morning training for Michael Chandler.
Insane.
And then found out that he had a title fight, and I'm just not fighting anybody. So,
yeah, you got to wonder, you got to kind of feel for Justin Gaethje. He loses to Khabib in devastating fashion, doesn't really get to bounce back and have that big fight against that big name, which in and of itself could have been a red panty night for both of those guys. But Charles Olivera gets the booking. What do you think of that matchup as soon as you hear about it?
Super competitive. I mean, it's just another opportunity for Michael Chandler to show if he is like as legit as he seems to be. I mean, the Dan Hooker thing, I think, proves a lot of people. I mean, there's always those questions when you jump from a place like Bellator and you're coming into this, this big pond now with a ton of fucking sharks, right?
Yeah.
And he went immediately into the top 5. I don't think Dan Hooker at all is a slouch. Similar build here with Charles Oliveira, going to be much bigger than him in terms of height and length.
And a vast range of skill sets here.
Yeah, I mean, I lean towards Chandler still. I mean, Chandler,
I'm okay with that.
I think the guy, him and Poirier, is probably going to be the fight coming out of all of this. Of course, like where Conor stands, and we're going to hope for him to pull off the victory. But realistically, Poirier has been on another level in the past couple of years, and him versus Chandler to me is the fight I want to see come out of all of this.
Ultimately,
yeah,
for the strap,
Mm-hmm.
It'd be great to see those two guys match up. I have to say I'm excited about the matchup. It is good to see that Charles Oliveira is going to get his due. Being on this very hot winning streak, coming off of a huge win, getting to fight for a vacant title, and possibly be able to reap the benefits of a lot of the hard work that he's been putting in.
So another guy who had championship aspirations taken away from him, both in the cage by knockout in the first round due to weight cutting and Triple C. But also due to his own volition, because he stuck needles in his ass, TJ Dillashaw has been booked to make his comeback.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that someone with such an illustrated career, illustrious. Sorry, I'm pretty sure you could say illustrated as well.
I mean, they drew his career.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay. No, that's cool.
They drew it up. TJ Dillashaw comes off of huge disappointment against Triple C, and then beats himself, unfortunately, with EPO. Would you say that for sure he was injecting in his ass?
From all indications, I've heard that he likes it in the ass.
Okay. I think Cody Garbrant would probably agree with that.
I heard he was beating it off, too. That's
Neither
what you just said,
here nor there. He gets booked to fight Cory Sandhagen. Pretty dynamic fight. Not at all a tune-up fight. If you're TJ Dillashaw, you're getting right into the thick of things.
I mean, the UFC does not do tune-up fights at all. That is not in their normal MO. Their operating procedure is not to do tune-up fights. Sandhagen is about as hot as they come in the division right now. So, man, this is a big name, a big opportunity for him. We saw him have the issue against Aljamain,
yes.
And ever since then, he's been a bat out of hell, right? I would lean towards the fresher guy here. I can't wait for this fight, though. We're not too far away, man. Like, May sneaks up on you fast.
No, I mean, we're a couple weeks out, and the fact that this fight gets booked, TJ hasn't had any like combat experience in 2.5 years since that loss.
He's at a good gym though. He's at Elevation. There's a million good guys that train out of that gym. You're also training at Elevation. You know,
both literally and metaphorically. Yeah. Gonna be tough to bet against a more active, more devastating fighter right now, Cory Sandhagen.
And we just don't know. I mean, if you believe Cody Garbrant, who we're gonna get into in a second here, right? If you believe him, Dillashaw's been on this shit his whole career.
Yeah. So
now that there's an eye on him and on his performance, and we're going to be dissecting that, are we going to see a different TJ Dillashaw?
I think it's almost guaranteed that we will.
You think so?
Either way.
I mean, like, I don't know, man. Like, granted, he came out of, I don't know if he came out of nowhere, right? But, like, he goes from losing to, like, Rafael Assunção and kind of just being, you know, a guy who looked like he had talent, but also was maybe a little chinny, had some issues, but he was young.
Go back to the Ultimate Fighter finale against John Dodson.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, right.
Get knocked out by the smaller guy.
So, you know, but at the same time, he's a highly skilled guy, and he always was, and he was at a great gym, and you can grow and take those steps in your career, and sometimes losses are what you learn the most from. So I don't want to, like, completely take away from that, but, you know, he did make a huge jump with the Renan Barão fights, and then that pace has been such a big part of what he does, the amount of the volume of striking that he does.
The war with Dominic Cruz.
Yeah, you know, it will, all of them, you know, like all of those fights that he was winning, even in the knockouts, it's like he's throwing tons and tons of punches from every direction at a high pace. And you know, that's what EPO would be benefiting you, right?
A great benefit, a great value.
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think this is going to be fucking fireworks, man. Like, this is about as good of a fight as you're going to find. That division is quite possibly the best division in MMA today. We've said that before. I still pretty much believe it. Maybe 145.
It's a very deep pond.
135, 145, 155. You can tell me any of those three, but this one. Let's get into the next fight and just continue this. You know?
Local guy, Rob Font.
Yep.
Great to see him get this booking against Cody Garbrant, former title holder. That gets booked for May 22nd, 135 pounds.
Can you do me a favor real quick? I'll talk about Cody Garbrant for a second. Can you pull up Rob Font? I just can't remember the last person he knocked out.
Yeah.
In his last fight out there. Obviously, with Cody Garbrant was aiming for a lot bigger names, but I also think he was aiming for easier fights. He was looking for the Jose Aldos of the world, the bigger names to come and get. So he had knocked out Marlon Moraes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what it was. I mean, these 3 fights in a row from Rob Font are pretty good names to knock off here. Sergio Pettis, who's moving on to Bellator. Ricky Simon, who maybe has also moved on to Bellator. I can't remember.
I think so, yes.
And then Marlon Moraes, who that which is maybe the most questionable one because he was maybe coming back a little too soon from the Sandhagen knockout, and that hurt him here. But, man, a great performance for Rob Font when he came out there. It's obviously the focus is all going to be on Garbrant with this fight, though.
Yep.
Former champion. Can he get back to his winning ways? He's a person, if we could pull up his record real quick, who has kind of traded wins and losses as of late and has showed kind of a low fight IQ. Not even traded, right?
No, so you're talking his last big win is that knockout of the year performance against Rafael Assunção, where he cocks back, knocks him out against the cage. But before that, they set him up for a good fight, a tough fight against Pedro Munoz.
They had a great fight. I mean, it was fucking
and he was winning that fight.
Yeah, but he has no fight IQ. Like, this is the issue, right? It's
beats himself.
The same problem. Like, the 2 losses to Dillashaw, like, illustrate this too, where it's like, man, the guy sees blood and he does not know how to shut it off. He maybe has some of the nicest hands.
Plays with his food.
Yeah.
To bring up one of your mentions.
I
Dominic Cruz. Remember the Dominic Cruz fight?
That. Maybe should have got a finish there, but he didn't want to go to the ground with Cruz either.
Sure.
So I think every time he knocked him down, he couldn't really follow up. But the Dillashaw stuff, it's like, man, like you kept knocking him down, and you just couldn't help. You put your chin up in the air and you throw wild hooks and hope for the best. And maybe he's worked that out. If he has, he is top 5 in this division. He is potential champion in this division if he's worked it out.
I would almost hesitate to say that he's worked it out because in his most recent performance, cocking back like he did.
Yeah.
You're in dangerous waters with anybody.
Don't play that game with Rob Font either, man.
Yeah, Rob Font's game, if anything. And if you look at his last 5 performances, because even the loss to Rafael Assunção, I think, could have gone either way, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean,
and then he head kicked Thomas Almeida.
Yeah,
which is a big deal.
He's fighting he's fought in the past 5 or 6 fights, all legitimate names. And that's where I think you've seen a step up in his performance. He's like we were just talking about with Dillashaw. It's a guy who maybe is growing into the role a little bit more. Not obviously, maybe I hope he's doing it clean. We can never tell in MMA.
Good point.
But he's definitely taken that next step up here. And for me, I'm looking at this as a huge opportunity for him to pop into the top 5. I'm early today, and I probably will 2 months from now.
We'll drop some picks. Yeah.
Pick him because he is a local guy, but also because he's highly talented.
Yeah, and I think I can already feel the conversation coming up. Something that you're always quoted as saying, and it's a great term, great take. These guys go through waves. Mm-hmm. We've all seen Cody Garbrant's wave. I wanted to almost say that we've seen TJ Dillashaw's wave. So it'll be interesting once we get closer to those fights and be able to put some picks in.
It is tough to say, though, with guys like Dillashaw and Garbrandt, right? Where can you go if you don't win these fights? Because Dillashaw, especially, we've seen he can't make the step down in weight, right? He can't make that transition was not easy for him. I'm not saying he can't do it.
He
but
talked about it like it was the greatest weight cut of his life, but when we looked at the performance, we could tell that it just wasn't that.
He looks like a fucking ghost, dude.
Yeah, it didn't look good.
He looked like a walking corpse. So at the same time, Garbrandt has made the same, mentions along the way. He has also said, I'm going to take that weight cut. I'm going to go down. But neither one of them looked like they could go up. Right?
Yeah, I almost feel like Cody got bailed out at not being able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think that would have ended well for him either.
No, Figueiredo whooped that ass.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have the speed advantage in that case. And if you're going to be chinny and not have the speed advantage at those lower weight classes, I could pretty much say that you're done.
Yeah, it is an interesting question. I'm sure we'll get into it more as the fights come up. Where do they go from here? There's high stakes in these fights, and when you're in weight classes like this, there's always going to be really, really high stakes. So,
all right, brother. So let's get into the big event that's going on this weekend: UFC 260, the heavyweight showdown, the rematch, part dos, Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic. Some would say the greatest heavyweight of all time.
Yeah, we've had this discussion kind of before.
Yeah, when I say some, I mean us.
Yeah, there's a small contingent of people who probably would tell you he's not, but I mean, Stipe Miocic, probably the best heavyweight to ever live.
Credentials
at this point,
wise,
right?
yeah, 100%. Yeah,
we would have to agree. Which brings me to my first point, Matt. Let's start here. How fucking disrespectful is it that this man is an underdog?
Yeah, I feel like he's always been an underdog.
What was the actual score of their first fight? Did he not get? I mean, he won every round.
No, it was across the board.
But did he win any of those 10-8?
Let me see if I can find that.
Because the last couple rounds of that fight, if I remember correctly, were a fucking massacre. And by massacre, I mean he was just there was nothing Ngannou could do, right?
Well, that was when we realized that Francis's wrestling was almost non-existent. Every position that he was taking was just terrible.
Mm-hmm. And has he really? Do we know that he has really
improved?
Because we haven't seen him do any of it.
All right, so you had
there was a 10-8 round.
You had the fourth round being a 10-8 round on all three judges' scorecards.
So listen, man, how are you going to? How would you disrespect a guy who is unanimously the best heavyweight ever, who is not past his prime at all, right? Has beaten everybody basically they've put in front of him. And yes, has he gotten knocked down by guys? Overeem has knocked him down. DC obviously knocked him out. Ngannou, I believe, knocked him down in the first fight.
He landed one of the cleanest shots you're gonna land.
Yeah, it's but the dude's got through all of them. He's tough as fuck. I just don't understand how just because of punching power, we've fallen a little too in love with calling Ngannou Tyson here. Right.
No, we keep making the same mistake with these knockout artists. It's oh, look at how he's running through these guys. Right. He went in a 5-round affair with Stipe. In all 5 rounds, he looked overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. You're bringing up fights where he's lasted a minute before he's knocked some of these guys out. I haven't seen anything that's going to show me that that's going to change. Mm-hmm. You wonder why knockout power has such a heavy weight with it when you look at the odds makers. But Stipe's always, I feel going to overcome those odds.
Well, I guess this is where odds are tough because obviously I understand that Vegas is saying to themselves, the chances over 5 rounds that Ngannou could land one singular punch that disconnects Stipe from his consciousness,
I like what you did there.
That is a probable outcome. I don't necessarily disagree with that. However, that's only probable to me in the first 2 rounds, unless Stipe is not able to impose his own game. Listen, like if Ngannou's out here controlling the stand-up, it's going to be a long fucking night.
If he's able to stop 2 or 3 takedowns early on, it's a different ball game.
But the issue is like Ngannou's not a defined striker. Like he's not a well-rounded striker. He is as powerful as they come. But like that Jairzinho Rosenstrike knockout is not like a highly technical knockout, right?
Nope. I mean, some would say that he was wildly punching.
He did about everything wrong in that you
could have certainly got caught on the way.
He has the great equalizer, but the thing is, when you deal with, there's levels to this shit, right? And it's like when you
we're gonna get a button eventually that says there's
says
levels to this shit.
If you go against guys that have high fight IQ, that are well-rounded, and that's what Stipe is, he's a smart guy who's tough and durable, who can fight at every aspect of MMA, and he's developed that over the past how many years? Way before, he was getting knocked out by Stefan Struve, way long before fucking Francis Ngannou even thought about being in
this
the
guy
UFC.
Was going into wars with JDS way before Francis was even on the radar.
The guy's UFC, he's on UFC on Fuel. Like he was fighting in 2012 in the UFC.
He fought Joey Beltran. 2011. Okay, that's how far back we're going with.
There's just a whole difference in what these guys know. So unless Ngannou can find lightning in a bottle and he can get that first round knockout, which the UFC would love, it's not going to be. He shouldn't be a favorite. I don't know if it's not going to be competitive, but he shouldn't be a favorite.
I mean, if we look at the odds, it's not crazy, right?
You still are. Stipe is still the underdog. Like, no, is it kind of a coin flip? Yes. Some books,
but it should be a coin flip the other way at least.
Yeah, like your favorite should be the champion,
who already owns a win, a dominating win,
who's already showed you that he has. Honestly, if Vegas is worried about losing on Ngannou, I'd be worried about all these fucking guys with a ton of bankroll that can just go and lay money on Stipe right now.
So let's talk about why the odds makers may be what they are. So since they met back in 2018 when Stipe dominated Ngannou, there was the snooze fest against Derek Lewis, and a lot of people have kind of given him, which he lost, yes, 100%, which some people have now given him a reprieve for. I think that should still stand out in your mind because it was the only other fight that went the distance.
You say that though, but I recently, as recent as about 2 weeks ago, Daniel Cormier was talking about this, that even Francis Ngannou was worried about throwing at Derek Lewis. That normally this guy's never afraid to get in there, and you were going to get into his next 4 fights, and we will in a second. But this guy has never really been somebody afraid to engage. He wants to stand and swing with you because he knows you'll go down first.
We just talked about the disrespect with Rosenstrike. Didn't respect his game at all. Didn't do any of that with Derek Lewis.
And Derek Lewis on his end was hurt, but is also a guy who likes to wait on you a little bit. He wants you to come to him. But yeah, get into his other fights.
So after the Derek Lewis fight, he goes into a fight with Curtis Blades, where a lot of people are thinking Curtis Blades is going to go into this and dominate Francis Ngannou after his recent performances because he had all the credentials to do so. Mm-hmm. Instead, Francis Ngannou in 45 seconds knocks out Curtis Blades.
Matt, what did he do in 2016 to Curtis Blades?
Oh, well, I mean, he knocked out Curtis Blades.
Wow.
In 2016. Yeah, okay. Nobody was surprised. But there was a lot of talk going into that fight that Curtis Blades was going to do something crazy. Didn't happen out that way.
We have more information on Curtis Blades than we did now.
We did then.
Yes,
yeah, makes sense. And then he goes on to beat Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos, 2 guys that I think it's safe to say are well past what we considered their heyday.
They left the best versions of themselves in the cage with each other.
A long
that's
time
a great
ago. Point.
Especially Cain Velasquez, and I was very optimistic for this fight when Cain was on his comeback. I was hopeful that we were going to get the old Cain.
See a quick takedown.
We didn't, but I also remember he got hurt in that fight before he got knocked out, right?
This is where there was a lot of controversy. A lot of people thought that his knee gave out before he got hit by Ngannou. He actually gets uppercutted by Ngannou, which causes him to then kind of go in and out of consciousness. his knee collapses, gets injured in the fight. Follow up as
okay.
Francis goes to ground and pound, and we get the TKO.
Junior, I mean, the guy is amazing, but he gets knocked out. So
Chinny, we talk about chinny guys who are going to get hit.
That's not that crazy. And then Rosenstrike, I think we were all anticipating a much more competitive fight between them, and it was a decent first round. But Rosenstrike looked nervous the whole time. He didn't look like he was ready for that stage. And so I look at these fights since Stipe, and I just look at the betting odds, and it does not make sense to me, man. Why would you take these 4 fights and think that any of them are to the level that? I mean, the guy's fought Daniel Cormier 3 times in a row now, by the way, which is
total
nuts.
Fight time less than 2 minutes, Len.
Mm-hmm.
Between those 4 fights,
which is impressive. But
it
what was his total fight time before that fight?
But it was the same thing, which is why I'm saying we haven't learned anything about Francis that we didn't already know.
Yeah. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. I am 100% putting all of my backing behind Stipe Miocic.
Yeah.
I think he probably gets the job done again, either late stoppage or by decision, either by exhausting Ngannou or just controlling him. One of the two.
I think Stipe definitely owns the upper hand here, just knowing that he can weather the storm that is Francis Ngannou.
I assume if you're a gambler out there,
which a lot of you are,
I would assume you get a pretty good payout if you were to parlay Stipe Miocic and the over on this fight, just because I know that if you're already anticipating the favorite to be Ngannou, you're also anticipating
a short
fight, first or a second round knockout. Yep. So that's where my money would be going currently on this fight, would be
taking notes.
Just on the odds alone. Like I feel like they've pushed me that direction.
Yeah, the proof is in the pudding. I think we both agree where this fight's going to go, and it sets up a lot of exciting matchups afterwards, which is also why I'm hoping that this goes the way that we want it, that we're expecting it to.
Yes, sir.
But co-main event, we get a former champion, 170 pounds. I don't know why I keep thinking they deserve that extra 5 pounds.
I mean, they should just make the weight divisions different anyway. So
I should be credited, right? Thanks.
Yeah. Good point.
We get Tyron Woolley versus Vicente Luque. Both, I guess you could say, high-level competitors at 170 pounds, but Vicente Luque, being known as the bruiser that he is kind of on the way up. With Tyron Woolley, we're not exactly sure where his career is going.
There's probably 2 different ways you can look at this, and exactly what you just said would be one of them. Is this them looking to get Woodley? Are they either looking to get him back on track or looking to build somebody's name off of him? Also, is this a matchup that in a way favors some of what Woodley... I mean, it's a way to kind of see where Woodley's at if he's willing to engage with somebody. Because like you just said...
He's not really going to have a choice.
Vicente Luque is going to make you fight. But the past couple guys that we have seen Woodley fight have also made him fight.
They've been able to put a pressure on him that he just is not able to withstand. I don't see that lightening up at all in this fight.
I struggle, if he loses here, Woodley's got to probably move on.
That'd be 4 in a row. That'd be 4 in a row.
I mean, I don't want to ever say retire. I mean, he is a little on the older spectrum. He's like late 30s.
It'd be tough to say to retire when you have Bellator sitting over there with a pretty thin 170 pound division.
But man, you can't beat anybody being a punching bag. Right?
Yeah, we call him a punching bag so much on this show.
It's a really tough thing to do, though. But it's hard to watch. It is hard to watch, man. He hasn't won a round. He has fought 15 consecutive rounds without winning one. And some of them were 10-8s against Kamaru, right?
Some of them were 10-8 against Gilbert Burns, too.
Man, I feel bad for the guy. I mean, the rap career was bad.
But you got to hope. I mean, his outing against Colby Covington didn't end. I mean, the fight wasn't going well at all for him, but it also didn't end well with him having to basically scream out in pain because his rib was injured.
Yeah. But he didn't look like he wanted to be there for that either. And it's like, so even if he was go to Bellator, it's not going to help him.
No.
Like, if you don't want to be there, you don't want to be there.
Good luck fighting Douglas Lima.
Yeah, it's true no matter what the fuck you do in your life, right? Like, I don't know if that's going to turn his career around. Even if he went PFL. Like, Rory McDonald's already whooped that ass once. Yeah. Rory McDonald, might get it again.
You're right. You're not wrong. You're 100% right there. When you're looking at the opposite end of it, Vicente Luque, although he doesn't have the name value, the one big name that he's fought, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, took a loss. But
it was a good fight, but Stephen Wonderboy Thompson put a clinic on.
If we go back as far as his other big name, we're looking at Leon Edwards, a guy who's constantly talked about on this show. That's another loss for him. He's beaten guys like Bilal Muhammad, Nico Price, Mike Perry, Brian Barberena. These are guys that are kind of settling in and around the top 15. This is a huge step up in competition for Luque, but it's also a great opportunity for him to kind of stake a claim in this division.
It's going to be a big step up. I mean, yes, no, a big step up, because obviously Wonderboy Thompson's a bigger step up. As crazy as that is, after we know that Woodley had such success against Wonderboy, but Wonderboy these days is probably a more credible competition.
Crazy.
At the end of the day, I actually really badly want to go with Tyron Woodley, because I think that he is better than he's shown.
Okay.
But at the same time, I have to take what's been given to me, and I can't envision him winning. I think this might actually be where he stops losing rounds, and he just gets knocked out.
Oh, that's rough.
I hope not, man. I just told you. I'm pulling for you, Tyron.
I know.
As crazy as that sounds.
I would say we do a very good job here trying to prop up the old guard before they're on their way out. Mm-hmm. But this is going to be one of the ones where I do think if Tyron does win it, he goes back to his wrestling, is able to really establish his ground game, maybe get some ground and pound in, and it's a quick 3-round fight.
This fall of his, though, really, it reminds me of like Chris Weidman, right? How like Weidman had the strap, was beating everybody, and
as soon as you lose
all of a sudden he couldn't fucking buy a win. And it's like, look at that win-loss record for Tyron Woodley. He was doing great work in the UFC after the Rory McDonald loss, and it's just... Man, he's lost it, and maybe it's just a matter of you got to have one fight go right, and this could be it. But I wouldn't bet on him.
I certainly wouldn't bet on it. If anything, I'd bet the other way.
Mm-hmm. So who's the next fight up there? Oh, all right.
I hesitated a little bit to bring it up because I wanted us to take a deep breath.
Oh man, the return of our like most embarrassing pick of all time, man.
I'm speechless right now because I have thought about this fight all week, and when I think about who we're about to talk about, it's no fault but our own, but he has a lot of making up to do.
He's had a bad run since that loss.
Yes, he has not had a good time. So let's just say this:
it was our most watched episode ever that we've done on the channel, dude. I'm pretty sure it's so people watched us fall on our face pretty bad on this one. Sugar Sean O'Malley's making his comeback here. We thought he was everybody. It wasn't just
we thought he was the second coming.
Yeah, we don't need to like take all of this on ourselves.
No, dude, I think I did a good job kind of setting the precedent of what we're expecting, of what we've already dealt with. Mm-hmm. Now let's just move forward. Yes. I don't think we need to go backwards on
going against another guy, though, was like a hot up-and-comer at a time, has kind of hit some up and downs himself, but has kind of turned around recently. Thomas Almeida. Sugar Sean, though, where I say he has not looked good recently, I don't remember exactly what happened, but he had some comments about Megan Anderson on his podcast that I know were not very good or well received.
They were not colorful.
Yeah, well, they were colorful. They weren't well liked or well received, though. There was that, and then he's also doing this whole bit now that he's never lost, which is a funny wrestling shtick. But like it's also a heel shtick, and I think he was a babyface before to an extent.
Yeah, I mean he's gone heel, but you want to be careful going this route when you're coming off of the unfortunate performance that you had.
I mean, is he just saying that? Does he think that he just got hurt in that fight and it had nothing to do with Marlon Vera?
You'd hate to think that, because then that's the Joanna Jędrzejczyk style of being a champion or being a fighter, where you're not able to own up to your own faults.
Yeah, acknowledge.
And you don't get better.
Some people may say the Diaz brothers have these issues.
Yeah, but they'll slap the shit out of anybody who wants to say something. Yeah. So we'll just leave them in a different category altogether. My concern for Sean is, how serious are you taking these fights? We've seen the witty banter on your podcast. A lot of the things that you've ended up in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. You've really got to come in and deliver against a guy in Thomas Almeida who has not really been able to step up in his last couple of performances.
I thought he had gotten a win more recently.
Yeah, I wanted to stop you when you said that, because the fight that he should have gotten a win, and we always hesitate to say this. I feel like I do this a lot. The fight that I think he was expected to get a win against Jonathan Martinez, dominated for 3 rounds. Not a good showing for him. But before that, he lost to Rob Font, Jimmy Rivera. In the big fight, the big matchup that everybody was looking at in between his other win, was the loss to Cody Garbrant.
Well, so this is exactly like how crazy is this, dude? The guy was 21-0. He was 21-0.
You don't get any hotter as a prospect than 21-0.
He is now 22-4.
Yes.
Wow. That is tough, but I guess it's a step up in competition was part of that. He's not. I mean, if you look at the people he's lost to, I'm in no position to say this, but you would say he's not top caliber. Just looking at the people he's lost to. He's
not going to be the guy who's going to beat anyone in the top 5.
He could still make a step. Like, he could still make that next thing. But now it goes to say, fun thing to look at here. The loss of Ortega Volkanovski off this card has now put them in a position where 2 of their top 3 fights feature people that are coming off of 3 losses in a row.
Oof.
I mean, you say you're not boxing.
Take it easy, buddy.
You say you're not boxing.
But you're doing some boxing shit right now.
I mean, that's a card.
Yeah.
But it was a great card when you had the 2 title fights on there. But
you were banking on that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of boxing thing, right? If you lose 1 fight off a boxing card, that card's fucking screwed, right?
But I don't think it affects a box. I mean, boxing, popularity-wise, it's not going to be a big miss if those cards, because they're usually pretty quick at getting those turned around and rescheduled.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the UFC, it is tough to get a fight rescheduled in the UFC.
Like immediately. Yeah,
It
takes a little bit of time.
So my big concern there is when you're dealing with the COVID bug in the form of Alex Volkanovski, that was a huge fight for this card. And now you're just kind of anchored by...
you have name value in a way. I mean, you have a former champion. Even though Tyron Woodley's coming off these losses, he is a former champion. Luque's got a good, he's a good fighter. He's a high pace. It's going to be exciting, should be at least.
Sure.
And then you're banking on name value with Sugar Sean here. But the reality is both these guys are coming off losses, and you have them featured in a fight that's, in essence, if this is one of the few times I think that we're
sweat, Len.
In some ways, this is one of the few times the UFC is actually building a fighter the way boxing would build a fighter, though, right?
In a way. Let's take a guy who's 10-10 and let's put him up against our up-and-comer.
Well, I was going to say, for instance, like if Ryan Garcia had lost his most recent outing, that's kind of taken him to that next level, right?
Yeah.
If he had people love that he got knocked down and stuff. He fought through some adversity.
Yeah.
But
everybody loves to see it.
If he had lost that fight, the next fight out would have been against
a no-name guy,
fucking bottom of the barrel guy that they found in the alley.
If it wasn't set up to be an automatic rematch, yeah, you're 100% right.
So this feels a little bit like Almeida has some credibility. I thought he even had won recently because I think
the name
value wise, he is a guy that won for so long that you kind of give him a pass. So on name brand alone, he's going to be on a poster, and we might be like, oh, Thomas Almeida, that's pretty good fucking fighter.
That's a good win,
and he is a good fighter. I don't mean to say he's not, but I mean. How much does this do for Sugar Sean other than just getting him back on the right side of the win-loss record here?
Which is probably the most important thing right now.
Yeah.
Because if Sugar loses this fight, it is hard to come back from it.
Yeah, I guess I should be careful because I don't actually think it's a bad thing. The UFC is often criticized for not building people this way, right?
Yeah, you'd want them to get this right, and hopefully Sugar's able to not only win but come off with a great performance against a guy who's got the name value.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're doing the deep digging, you're not going to be able to really give credit where credit is due because of the record that Thomas Almeida is sporting right now.
Yeah,
he really just needs a win. Let's hope that he gets it.
I mean, I don't hope that he gets it. I'm again pulling for Sugar Sean. Honestly, his personality is taking a hit.
Well, I meant Sugar Sean. He needs the win against Thomas Almeida. Let's hope that he gets it.
So the guy has not looked great outside of the cage. I can't say I really support a lot of the way he's been outside of the cage. However, I love the way he fights inside of the cage. I'm gonna pull for Sugar Sean again. I'm off the bandwagon after this one, though. Hate me if you will.
Yeah, we're still on the bandwagon, but we're hanging on by a thread at this point. But that wraps up UFC 260.
Or a preview. I mean, there's plenty more fights.
There's plenty of other fights, but as far as the name value, stick your eyes on the main, co-main, and the fight right below that. Not a bad card overall. One to keep your eyes on. Are you excited for it, Len?
I'm excited for this main event. Anytime we get Stipe Miocic out there, I know it's going to be good. Even though I'm talking a little shit on Ngannou being the favorite, at the end of the day, I'm going to be on the edge of my seat because there is that chance for knockout.
Oh, yeah.
That type of recipe.
That's why we tune in.
That type of recipe makes us in store for a great night. I'm going to be intently waiting for that main event. But the rest of the stuff in the lead up, I'm not as thrilled as I have been in recent UFC fights. I think we're coming off of a card that had 3 championship bouts.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we've been spoiled
it's
recently.
tough.
We've been spoiled. But any chance to see Tyron Woolley possibly get knocked out? Sign me up, Mr. Barry Gordy. So if you've enjoyed this so far, make sure to jump into the comments, hit us in the likes, and make sure you're tagging that subscribe button. And make sure to catch us here next time on our next edition of Tale of the Tape, where we're going to be talking some hot gas.
Yeah, man. I don't know what fights are coming up.
Don't care.
I'm sure they're great. We'll definitely have our thoughts on the main event from this weekend next week. Also, keep an eye out for our episode that'll be dropping on Saturday. We'll be doing every Saturday we drop kind of a podcast where we talk more music, movies, TV. We never
Pop
really
culture.
talk about music, but
I like how you started off with music.
yeah, it's like in case you love music, we might talk about it this week.
we're just teasing at it at this point.
Yeah. But all this other shit that we do love, obviously we're for those with good taste. We have taste in many different areas. MMA is one of them. I might get into a little wrestling this week.
Ooh, WWE to the cock, baby.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. We're out of here. Later.
Peace.
For those with good taste.